Let's have a show of thumbs up. Chat's open. All right, awesome. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the waterfall method of using the chat in Zoom, for those of you who've heard of it, great. For those of you who haven't, I'm going to explain it right now. I'm going to ask a question. And what will happen is that instead of everybody sort of typing in and pressing enter at their own pace, and so of course we have like a couple answers come in soon, and then like everyone kind of comes in at their own time, and there's like a time frame to everything coming in. We type the response to whatever the prompt is in the chat. Once you type it in, you wait, and I'll count down 3, 2, 1, and then you press enter all at the same time. So like a waterfall, all of the responses come all at the exact same time. So there's no like value judging to like people who get there first. Basically, everyone has a chance to type, and everyone's response comes in sort of at the same time. So with that in mind, I'm going to put the first prompt into the chat. Remember, don't actually post it yet, just type it out to whatever degree you'd like to. And here are the instructions and the prompt. Name 1 to 2 similarities between language and music. So we're talking about compare and contrast. Right now, this is compare. You will be asked to expand upon your responses. So in the chat, based off of the reading or based off of your own personal interpretation of language and music, go ahead and type in 1 to 2 similarities between those two systems. We'll give you folks another 60 seconds or so. So Daniel, make sure that you're waiting, like we're going to do the waterfall, so we all do it at the same time. No problem, sir. Oh, come on. How was I putting that in? Lost someone.
Yeah, for Pete, that you with me.
Oh, okay.
If I bounce it back, well, if I go in and out, drop it last week, I apologize in advance.
No worries.
Okay.
Now, as I mentioned, part of this is going to be a discussion afterwards. So thumbs up if we're ready for the waterfall. Counting down 3, 2, 1, waterfall. Wonderful. All right, so we have quite a few different answers here. I'm just kind of browsing through them. Some include examples. That's nice. Now, as I mentioned, being a seminar class, you're going to have to defend your position. So, since Daniel, I see you did place yours a little bit further down, we're actually going to start with James Andrew. So, James Andrew, now that I am muted, please go ahead and unmute yourself and talk about, expand upon how pitch and communication, no, I'm sorry, how they're both universal. How so?
Oh, so how, oh, so I think someone's saying, again,
yeah, I don't have, is anyone else unmuted? I can't, my phone won't go completely off the volume, so that's my.
Let's see what we can do with you just talking and see how it goes.
Okay. It's all right if it's all right if it's just coming from me. It's all right. So the reason why I said it's universal is because from my perspective, both language and music are universal because they're both ways in which people are able to connect with each other. And without them, how are we able to learn about each other's culture, our background, our ethnicities, so on and so forth. So that's why I say that both language and music are universal, because they're both essential to us living here.
Hey, Carrie, you just turn off your audio, and then when you need to.
Sorry for the awkward pauses, everybody. We always trying to figure everything out as we go here. Okay, so I'm also going to try my best to take some notes here. Let's see. Like I mentioned, we have some active tech support going on in class right now. So let's see here.
There's something I thought I would do. Or undo for you to talk.
All right, so interesting point. So we are talking about the idea of connecting through culture, and I actually wanted to ask you a quick follow-up.
Sure.
You can just kind of like say it back to me, and I'll respond to the group. Like when you're talking about communicating through culture, are we talking about interculturally or cross-culturally? Specifically, what are you talking about?
No, before I knew myself, wait, could you define inter and cross? What would they?
So inter would be same culture and cross would be a different culture. I mean, I understand that you can talk about like tiers of culture, like the difference between the way men and women are socialized, but at any rate, like just, are you talking about the ability for people to connect through their culture or for people to connect across differing cultures?
I think you mean intracultural. Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah. For me, I think it's both ways. I think it's both ways I really do see it as both ways. I see it as both ways of intercultural and cross-cultural, because it's important for us to know our own culture, yet it's also important to know about other people's culture. So that way, if we ever, like when we goes on, like when musical ensembles go on tours and stuff, we are able to understand, okay, so this is how this culture is and stuff, and this is how people interact with each other, and this is the type of music that they bring into society, things like that.
Thank you for your expanding on that, James. Now, I was kind of prepared for this particular deviation because when you're talking about language and you're talking about music, the almost inescapable comparison that's going to come up is the idea of universal language, right? Music is a universal language. And I want to respectfully disagree with an example. I almost brought my own synthesizer on my backpack. Well, I mean, you've heard that phrase before, universal language. Yes, everyone says that. And I wanted to make an example that hopefully draws some idea to the fact that music is culturally informed. So we're going to start off with the scale that some of you might be familiar with. What was that? It was F minor. So F harmonic minor, we know what to do with in like Western culture. It exists for specific reasons. But let's say that we took that same scale and started from a fifth scale degree. Does anybody know what that is?
The harmonic minor starting on the fifth.
It is known as gypsy scale. I'm yelling across the room. It also has an official term.
I've never heard of gypsy scale. I've never heard of gypsy. Wow, I've never heard of that.
I have a feeling that that's not exactly the most sensitive term for it. Phrygian dominant. Phrygian dominant scale. So of course it's a Phrygian scale, except that it has a raised third. So off of C Phrygian dominant. Kind of spicy. It's kind of unusual to Western ears. We're not really sure what to do with that scale. However, unlike Western ears who say it's kind of odd and maybe non-functional, it is a song-plated celebration, right? So basically, I'm using this as sort of as an argument. It's not a definitive argument that music can be culturally informed. It can be biased based off of the ways that we are exposed to it, and it can have these different kinds of connotations based off of our experiences and expectations, which I think we talked about in this class to death. I just wanted to make that point because I was expecting universal language literally to come up as sort of an idea. I'm not saying I'm necessarily refuting your point specifically to point it out, since it was in that realm of music and language overlapping.
Daniel,
Yeah, when I'm walking around, I can't read chat. Isn't that supporting the argument music is universal? I would say not, because if you were to show people like I showed in this room, you may not necessarily connect it to Hava Nagila specifically. You may not even think that it's necessarily something you could write with, but you know, you could make that argument if you'd like to make the opposing argument. So as far as I can tell, it's Robert. And as a matter of fact, could you folks use your hand raised reaction? Because I think that helps me to keep it in order. But for now, Robert, go ahead.
How are you defining music? Are you talking about a song? Are you talking about pitch relationship? Like, how are you defining it so we can kind of know where to center the conversation?
That's a really great question. I appreciate it. How about anything that we would consider music in our own professional lives, which of course is different for everybody, but we're not going to say a babbling brook sounds like music. We're probably not going to say birdsong is specifically music unless it's adapted for a concert band piece. But just for simplicity's sake and the fact that we're having a conducting seminar class, something that we would define music is something that we might actually find performed. Yeah. All right. Do we have any other thoughts that we want to share upon that before moving on to the next comment? All right, Dan.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for using the raise hand. And real quick, I need to move over to make sure that you can be heard. So give me 2 seconds.
yeah, well, in support of James Andrew, if you're able to use the same scale in 2 different cultural contexts and have understood meaning between both cultures, I think that kind of helps substantiate James Andrew's point that under like language, I disagree that language is universal, because there's not one single language in which everyone on earth can understand. But if you play a drum beat tapping quarter notes, and add maybe some of the sort of drum rhythm on top of it, most people are going to understand that there's some sort of music beginning to happen or something. Or if you have a solo violin playing something, people will be able to understand. Or if you have someone singing, even you can have someone singing in their native language and someone else listening to it. So this is, I'm saying this is, I'm kind of in support of James Andrew's point that music is universal. I think it's one of the few things on earth that is universal. So anyway, that's about it.
You're going to see some arguments. And you're going to see some arguments in the pro music being sort of a universal language a little bit later in our video that we're showing. I didn't post the link, but we'll watch it right at the very beginning of the second half. Anybody else before we move on? Our second comment came in from Robert. Pitch and communication, parentheses, drum and fife band. Go ahead and expand upon what you mean about that. And again, the prompt is 1 to 2 similarities between language and music.
So with language, inflection of the voice can make a statement such as like hello versus hello, making it a question. So an inflection of pitch. So in music, if we were to play something or listen to something and you hear like some kind of melody and it kind of hits hard and then backs off. So that's kind of a way of communication with pitch. And I mean, even with Mandarin, I mean, that language is purely pitch base. So you can say the same syllable, but if you put it in 7 different tones, it's going to mean something completely different. In regards to communication, just choo-choo, I'm on that bandwagon of rhythms and everything. If you're able to play a rhythm on a drum, it's not really pitch bass, but sorry, got distracted. But like, you know, certain things will bring certain ideas in communication, such as one famous little cadence, rump rump, rump rump, rump rump. Everyone knows that, okay, there's a parade, there's a march happening, or even if it's the first four notes of your national anthem, just the nation's national anthem. Everyone has a different thing, but I'll just say that with rhythms, we feel rhythms on day-to-day basis when it comes to like just heart rate and pulses. So that's why I put the idea of the drum and fife, where you have drums trying to create a command, and then the fife to also dignify the command. So I'm just kind of broad on that. Sorry, just rambling.
I guess I'll do it here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just doing my best to sort of like get everybody's, like condense the ideas that you put forth. I apologize if I missed any of the larger points, but just to sort of have a record of it. Anybody want to expand upon that idea of like linguistic inflection, tonal languages that use pitch? Ron, you could actually speak on this at length because you speak Chinese natively. Or do you have any sort of insight into the idea of tonal language versus music?
Actually, yes, there are many obvious difference between Chinese and English. Like the rhythm, I just want to talk about in my appointment, and you know, I think in Chinese, our language is composed with each I don't know, just like I think, okay, first of all, I think our two languages have one similarity. For example, hello, how are you? In Chinese, 你好，你今天怎么样？Like, I think the syllable speed in each language sounds similar, and the tone of each meaning is similar too. So I think this is also the universal, and this is also the relationship between two different languages. They're just languages, and the meaning of these two languages has the same mean. So I think, I don't know if I can explain clear.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much for your input on that. Yeah, obviously I don't speak tonal languages myself. I'm pretty much monolingual. But yeah, you bring up some really interesting points about there are universalities across languages. We tend to have, like you were mentioning, ni hao or hello, you know, those are like greetings do tend to be a little bit higher in the register. It does have a little bit of a fall. When you have rising intonation does tend to be taken as inquisitive, hello. And I think actually Robert brought that up specifically. So yeah, pitch and tone can have a very big impact on things. Obviously, we can talk more about items a little bit later that also make use of these contexts, but for the time being, I do want to continue on with the comments that you folks put in. So let me come up here and see that after Robert was Dr. Gravis. Articulation and rhetoric are two shared traits between music and language. Wonderful. Dr. Gravis, would you care to expand upon that?
Sure. So linguistically speaking, articulators are considered to be the lips, the tongue, the teeth, ways in which we are able to shape sound to express different things. Obviously, articulation in music, sometimes using those very same articulators, are the ways in which we're able to change the effects of sounds. And it hasn't really been until recently that, especially with sampled sounds that are used a lot in the film and television industry when they don't want to pay studio ensembles to play, that they've sampled enough sounds with different articulation that composers can choose articulation to express different things. Previous to this time, you know, when you put your music into Sibelius or Finale or any of those products, it all sort of started, when you push playback, everything would come out sounding the same robotic way because it lacked the kind of articulation, or the articulations were incredibly pedantic. You know, a staccato, all staccatos sounded the same. Well, not all staccatos are created equally. Well, not all tenutos are the same way. And then rhetoric, especially when it comes to the quote unquote pure music, this idea of conversation, of antecedent and consequent phrases, and of give and take and push and pull and shared linguistic conversation, musically speaking as well, just as if you were having a debate between two people in real life.
Well put, sir. Thank you. All right. Well, I did get that, but I have the notes for that in the chat. And interestingly, you did talk about something that will come up a little bit later. I guess I won't bring it up quite yet, but actually you mentioned something that I think would fall under a difference between language and music. And it was actually specifically mentioned in the article. We will get back to that very shortly. Next up, looks like it's Perry, communication and expression. Do you need help unmuting? Or do you think you'd be able to help him, AJ, get his phone back? Or that's what I was gonna, yeah, you could go to another computer, you can come to mine, you can come to Dr. Gravis's. That'd probably be a little bit faster.
I said communication and expression, and by communication, I tend to agree that music is the universal language. So that means that if two people from different places sat down and played music together, they could communicate with each other through that art form. And then expression, music can give express moods, as well as language can, you know, happy, sad, joyful, playful. So those are my two words.
Anybody want to expand upon? Oh, I am completely muted. I apologize. All right. So Daniel, you're next. One, it's the same. Two, both used for expression, which is a little bit what Perry was saying, but go ahead and talk about it from your standpoint, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Sure. As far as expression, you know, they're both used to communicate some sort of message, feeling, emotion, what have you, right? You're trying to send something to someone else and have them receive it. When I say there's not really a difference between speech and music, Yeah, there's really not, in my opinion. If you're talking, that can absolutely be musical. Excuse me, when you're talking, it is musical. But to shed a little bit more light and make it a little bit more clear, if you're singing and using language, you're still just it's like more rhythmic talking. It's just more rhythmic language. So outside of like the written language, I'm referring to when people are speaking. There's we can put it like this. It just there's like a gradation of how much do you kind of want to sing, how rhythmic do you want to be versus like how song like or melodic you want to be when you're using words.
I don't know if you intended to, but that was exclusive or almost verbatim taken out of the article, because it talked about this concept of, let me see, I got it here somewhere. Isochrony. So isochrony is this concept that, and it's actually still theoretical the way that the article places it, is that there's this idea of rhythmic syllability. English, like for instance, I studied Japanese. I don't speak it very well, but Japanese tends to be sort of a monosyllabic language. All syllables have the same basic weight, the same basic length to it. So there's not really a lot of stress the way that we have in English. But in English, we are able to have changing syllable lengths dependent upon things like stress in the word. So we can have a conversation about, and so like each of these different things, they can have different lengths based off of this concept of isochrony. Anyway, you were talking about like, gradation of it, and that's absolutely what it mentions in the article, that there are like, just straight adult speech, which can have really flowing sort of rubato kind of tempo to it. Whereas there's like, when you talk to children, it's a little bit more metric. And then you have actual song, rhythmic speaking, rap, whatever kind of performance like that, where it tends to be very, very metric because you're trying to fit into a specific meter. So thank you for those thoughts. Our next up here.
And no, I did not get it.
While I do that,
I just want to put that out there.
Let's go ahead and unmute you now. Sorry about that, Daniel. I was told that you had something else to add.
Oh, yeah. I want to say, no, I didn't get this from the article. This is actually a theory I've been teaching my 7th and 8th graders for a few years now. When I'm teaching, like when I'm just teaching various forms of music, I talk about the gradation from talking into singing. It just depends what we're doing, but I use it as an example. I sort of make a chart of different artists and sort of where they lie on this hierarchy. It's unscientific, but it's probably very similar to what's happening in the article.
AJ, you mind just kind of calling out if there's anyone, like if I just happen to miss someone? Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, at least one academic and all the papers that he references sort of agrees with you on that. So that's really cool. So I believe the next one up would be AJ. So AJ, language and music are both used to communicate something. They both started out as ways to reproduce, parenthetical, catching the attention of the opposite sex. Please go ahead and expand upon that.
I mean, the article really talked a lot about this, which is kind of where I got it from, especially with bird calls and with like apes kind of communicating. But I do believe that communication did start out with a way to kind of, attract the opposite sex. I mean, even with a bonk on the head with a caveman, okay, versus them coming out and singing or something like that. But I mean, innate in all of this, it's our brain's way of going, I need to reproduce, I need to find a mate. And so communication and music kind of go towards both of those.
Comments, questions, concerns, expanding on that idea? It absolutely was something talked about in the article. I kind of shied away from the parts. I mean, I know the article itself like dealt quite a bit with other species. And frankly, there's a reason that I highlighted the section that was in the email I sent, but didn't make it into the instructions. So I apologize if you did read the entire thing. I really wanted to focus on the human elements more than the animal elements, but I mean, the article itself was fascinating. I read through the whole thing. So, but absolutely, yeah, like this idea that it developed is sort of a way for us to be able to communicate, connect with our species. I think it mentions something about the social brain hypothesis, this idea that we're language and music both go towards increasing social cohesion. They emphasize and strengthen the positive evolutionary trait of societal living, which of course has its own benefits over living on your own. So that's always a good point to bring up. I think we might have one more, and I believe it was from Ron. So Ron, rhythmic correlation. Would you care to expand upon that at all?
Yes. Rhythm correlation. There is a rhythm between music and language, and this rhythm is related. For example, just a slide in the article, the acromular speed in music and the speed of syllables in the language of our conversation. And another similarity between the two in terms of rhythm is, I think, is speed. If we speak at a very fast speed, it will create a kind of tension and excitement. The same is true in the music. The fast melody will make us feel intense and enthusiastic, even angry. These are all similar feelings brought to us by fast rhythm and language and music.
Very well put. So this leads us to my second prompt, which is basically the polar opposite of the first. Where did I put it? Name 1 to 2 differences between language and music. So they talk about a couple in the asterisk paragraph in the reading, but you know, put whatever thoughts you have. What is it about language and music that is clearly different? You can go as deep into it as you want to. I mean, there's very obvious differences between them. So I'm kind of fascinated to see what we come up with. Let's take another 60 seconds to remember, we're going to do the waterfall. So don't actually type it in until we're all ready and we'll all have put that in our own responses. Thumbs up? Or do we need a little bit more time? Just a minute. We'll wait for a moment. There's no rush. Travis? Good. All right, 3, 2, 1, waterfall. I go 3, 2, 1 waterfall, but it's close enough. Honestly, with the lag, it's what? All right. So we got a couple here. I don't know. I was kind of hoping to go on to break early. We normally go at about 7:15. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. Suppose we'll just take a look at these. Why don't we just go ahead and have each of the people read it out kind of quickly, just like your thoughts on it. So Robert, different meanings intra and cross cultures. Expand on that for a couple of minutes and see if anyone else has anything to say about it.
Well, I mean, just like your example you gave us of the gypsy dominant scale. To one person, one thing could be relayed to one thing, but to another person, it's completely different. And also just tonalities. For us, we think of Western music as like the source, but if you were to go to South America and we were to go to like Argentina and stuff, they have a completely different tonal system. Same thing with India, North and South, and as well as Korean, and Indonesia with the gamelan system. So, I mean, one tonality is not going to come across. And that's the same thing that even Bernstein did in his article or in his Harvard thing. So if it's intra, yeah, it can have meaning, but if it's cross, it's not going to. And that has a lot to do with just the tonal systems that we use, what is deemed correct, what is deemed not correct. And then also, I mean, there's still cultures that play certain music during certain times of the season, summer for crops, winter for rain. And a lot of it has to do with just like the instruments they use. So, I mean, it's different versus language is direct communication. You can't really change language. I mean, you can change alphabets and stuff, but the message is still there versus a message with music can be lost in translation.
Very well put. Dr. Gravis has something to add.
Yeah, I think that Robert brings up an interesting point. My question in response is, then how do we answer for various cultures who find value in the music of cultures where they do not share the same scale or modal system? So for example, there are large numbers of people around the world who find Indian music to be particularly evocative, find deep meaning in it. There are many Japanese people who absolutely adore the Western musical tradition, and the finest Bach ensemble in the world is Bach Collegium Japan. Maybe is there perhaps more shared value across different systems? Is there greater understanding of musical literacy through different cultures than the ones that we're just born into?
All right, Daniel, you're on.
Yeah. So it's I'm kind of gonna answer what I wrote in the chat. So my feeling is that when you write a piece of music or someone plays a piece of music, that music just exists. It's gonna get a little meta, so I apologize. the music just exists, right? You created that music, now it's entered into the ethers and you absorb it. Whatever context or meaning you ascribe to that is your own construction. Okay? However, that can anyone can come up with their own sort of construction of what it's supposed to mean. That doesn't make it right, that doesn't make it wrong. All I'm saying is that music just is. So when Dr. Graffis is talking about how other cultures can become very interested in music from other places, that's one reason why I think it is, because the music just exists and then you absorb it in its form. And I'll just answer my other question too. So that's kind of what I think about that. And then I said music has always been and will continue to be, but language is very finite. And what I mean by that is that music essentially is just vibrations. That's all it is. And we can manipulate and do all sorts of things. So at a subatomic level, if our ears are good enough, you could hear the music of a chair, right? You could hear the music of the whiteboard. You could hear the music of the mask we're wearing, right? But our ears aren't good enough to hear that. It's just vibrate. It's made of atoms, and atoms vibrate, right? So everything is producing some sort of sound. So there's always some sort of vibration happening in the universe. Versus language is very finite. I mean, there's thousands of lost languages. So they're here momentarily, and then at some point, most languages and probably all people will cease to exist, but music will still be here.
Okay. Robert, then Perry.
All right, I'm gonna go back on to what Dr. Gravis said, and then also kind of jump into what Daniel said. Yeah, music can be cross-culture, like for instance, huge influx of Asian culture idolizing Western music. So like for instance, the Bach Collegium. But here's the one thing is that's not always the case. I mean, you can with the I'll just give you an example, like with African cultures, especially when they have shamans. For one culture, it's basically the shaman reads your whole future, and he does it in a singing tradition. But in order to get to that state, one person has to be inebriatedly drunk in order for the shaman to actually come up and give that whole spiritual reading. But at that point, you're not going to be able to understand what's happening, but that's music. And I'm going to also argue the point, what about those that are audibly impaired? I mean, Beethoven, some of his greatest symphonies, he was deaf. So yeah, vibration, but I think the true question is, what's the meaning? Does sound have meaning to the person? So, I mean, when it comes to these music traditions and stuff, it's not going to hit home. But then you have to go and ask yourself, okay, is this ethically music or is this culturally music? So, I mean, I feel that it's a fine line on just what we considered is music. So I just want to argue just that point.
All right, so after Daniel, I did want to actually go to another comment, but here's Taylor.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about or ask Daniel a question about him considering language finite. I mean, we get new words put in the dictionary all the time. And, like slang words that get put into the dictionary that kind of expands a language, or, words that become mainstream, or like I just said, put in the dictionary, like irregardless, which is, I don't consider it a word, but people put it in the dictionary, have put it in the dictionary. So that's my.
Well, that sort of speaks to how usage legitimizes. Like, language is dynamic. It changes over time. And musical styles are dynamic as well. Everything about music is
so
dynamic.
I don't think language dies because it evolves with current times.
Daniel, did you want to respond to his?
Sure. So to respond to Perry, actually, I have maybe a bit of a controversial view on this. I think spoken language is extremely inaccurate, and I don't like it. I really have a problem with it. So I believe spoken language is extremely finite, and I meant this in two ways. And it's usage for communication, but then also it's sort of like lifespan in the universe, right? A little bit meta there. The reason why I think language is very finite in its use of communication is that when I say, Perry, you're wearing glasses, right? The word, when I say glasses, that's only an approximation of what you're actually wearing on your face. Right? We've just said what you're wearing on your face is glasses. However, to someone else, those glasses could be something else. They could be a means in which you create fire. So, right, I'm holding this thing in my hand. I'm gonna ask a question to the class. What am I holding in my hand? Dr. Grab says a glass. Ron says a glass. This is open to everyone. Please feel free to write or speak into the glass cup. Okay. Right. Why glass coffee cup? Okay, it's a glass. Why is this not a trap for spiders? I see a big spider. I hate spiders. This is what I use. I catch my spiders in this. I don't think any of us want to drink out of something that we use to catch spiders, right? So this is because I would crawl up the top. The preferred usage is you have to flip it over and catch it underneath to catch a spider. But so this is what I'm saying, right? Kind of joking, is that we give a meaning to something in which we think is appropriate. However, it doesn't accurately describe what this item is. The only way to accurately describe this item is to let this item exist, right, in space and time. So this is why I think this is why I think language is very finite.
I wanted to let Robert have one final say, and then I really, really wanted to talk actually about Harry's comments. So, Robert?
Then I would have to say music's also finite. Because what one person's described one thing can be meant for something else. Just like my example of the shaman. If you were to speak the language, oh, I know what they're talking about. But if you don't, it's just a thing. And the one thing that I just want to kind of hit at is, in order for, and this is what I teach my kids, in order for sound to have meaning, that's my definition of music. Sound that has meaning. If it doesn't have meaning, then it's just sound. So for instance, in Thailand, they have a full elephant orchestra. They bang on drums and stuff. Is that music? No, someone's hitting the thing. Oh, you play here, you play here. So, I mean, it's got to have that meaning, or else it's just sound. And that's why I'm kind of going with music is finite, just like our language. however far language can go, music can only go just as far. And it wasn't until the start of even jazz music. And I say jazz music because jazz was the forefront of culture development. Music has always been an art that's always trailing the trend. Jazz started the trend. So, I mean, that's why we're having amazing developments with amazing groups, Snarky Puppy. I mean, Jesus, those guys can rip. But like, it can only go so far where language can go, because after that, it's just going to go silence.
All right, so a couple hot takes there. We're going to move on real quick because Perry, your original comment for differences, music is more innate while language is learned. We're going to hear more about that with the videos. So you actually kind of hit the nail on the head for the second half, but I just want you to expand on that just a little bit because, and I'm gonna sort of show my hand here. Language is also innate, but it depends on the kind of language we're talking about. I will leave it at that and let you go ahead and explain yourself.
When I said music is more innate, someone can go to that piano and play something musical, and it'll have a good sound to it. It'll be pleasing to the ear. But for someone to use a language, and I'm using an audio language, you know, words, that I feel that has to be taught. Because a kid doesn't know to say dada. The child is prompted to say the word dada by the parent, I'm dada. So the kid is just gonna not even use that syllable. That's what I mean.
All right, go ahead and mute. So this is covered a little bit in the video, but the video that we're watching, the person who, I don't want to give away who it is, but the person we're watching is a musician and a teacher by trade, not a linguist. But there actually is an argument that he makes, and that is very well known in the linguistic community. Children actually are not taught language. Children are exposed to language for the first, anywhere from, like, it depends if you're going to preschool, but from 3 to 5 years of life, they are absorbing. They don't actually get direct instruction. Like, yeah, like, oh, I'm dada, yeah. But then the rest of the time, it's mom and dad talking to each other. It's hearing sounds when they're in vitro. It's having conversations happening around them. And so the language that they pick up, like when they start babbling at whatever it is, 6 months to 9 months, I don't know the developmental cognition, but when they're start to produce language, like you're a native speaker by the time you're about 4 or 5 years old, and you have not had direct instruction on acquiring that language. This is kind of similar to music, and this argument again is made in the video that we're going to be watching to start off the second half. That said, there are elements to music and language that must be taught. Speaking is innate. In the language that you grew up around, you will learn that language orally. You'll learn how to reproduce it, assuming you don't have some kind of a developmental defect or something, physical limitation. But you will not learn to write. Writing is a taught skill. You are absolutely correct about that. In music, you can learn to be musical. You can learn to be surrounded by music. You can learn what a groove is. You can learn what a beat is. Reading music is not innate. Reading music is one of many skills that needs to be taught at the academic level. It's not something that you specifically pick up just by sitting and looking at it, because it's not a system that always existed. It's a system that was invented by humans and was brought to the forefront as time moved on. But we always had spoken language, or in the case of deaf individuals, like sign language, like the ability to be able to communicate. And we've always had music as a shared experience. If there are no further comments, I was going to call break there. Yeah, Daniel, I saw your hand was raised. Did you want to say something before we went on to our break?
Sure, why not? I still think language is pretty finite, but one interesting piece about the word dada, papa. So in almost every, well, I can't say every language. There was a study done about the like babies when they're learning language, and they did a study in maybe it was like 26 or 30 countries. I can't remember how many. It was a lot of countries, but essentially almost all languages, when it comes to saying like dad or mom, all sound pretty similar in every language. And it's something innate that happens with people, right? So in the United States, we might say dada, papa. I think they say like papa in Italy. If you go to Korea, it's amma, appa, right? We all have like these exact same syllable sounds. And it actually is innate. It's just you're going to say it as a baby. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. I can explain. Oh, please go ahead, Keona. Yeah, I would love to hear more.
All right. So every single culture has words that are reduplicated, and about 90 to 95% of them contain M, B, and P sounds. Can anybody guess what M, B, and P have similar? I, labials, two lips. These are sounds that babies make at the beginning of their babbling. And every culture around the world wants to say, oh my God, my infant's a genius. Dada, papa, baba, boo, boo, boo. Is the most common because it's a little bit more of it's an easy vowel to form when you're young and your tongue is not very finessed. So it's like a low vowel. It's a little bit easier than to say E or a rounded vowel. So a lot of languages, sort of like, it was more like the cart was ahead of the horse. They over time, obviously it became ingrained into the culture, but that's where all of these languages got that idea from. Babies babbling, even the reduplication of da, da, ba, ba, that's where it comes from. So in all the words that the babies are starting to say when at the beginning of their being able to speak, like they're gonna hit that mark once in a while. Maybe they'll say it in Korean or Filipino, and then when they say it in English, oh my God, my kid's a genius, So again, sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's where that comes from. Not necessarily, because kids can't say complicated noun cluster, consonant clusters. They can't form certain vowels. Like kids have like speech impediments when they're younger. They can't say certain letters. And there's a reason for that. Like there's a process to their being able to learn the language. And it starts at the front of the mouth with those bilabials. So it's not so much that they're like, oh, you're dada, and like they learn it. It's just literally the only sound that they can produce at that young age. And then slowly it's added to.
Also, doesn't.
Would you mind?
But also, doesn't that have to do with just like the development of the baby? Because I'm pretty sure they're not going to have a full like hard palate to produce some of these other words like the T's. And I can't. I'm just blanking on R. But just the use of the palate, because the palate's going to actually determine how strong a consonant's going to be. So I mean.
And you're not wrong. So like, there's a lot of cultures that have baba and papa. There's very few where the word for dad is Cthulhu. I mean, like that's just not going to happen because it's not a common thing for babies to be able to produce. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's developmental and every child develops at a slightly different, but there's like a range. And it always starts at the front of the mouth and basically moves backwards. There's also like a lot of linguistic theory that I didn't really want to get into, but as you stop using certain things, they drop out of your head as a native speaker. So we don't have the glottal sound that they have in Hebrew because we don't use it in English. And so it's harder for us to be able to produce, it's harder for us to be able to hear.
But to add on to that, the native speaking, that it's also mental. It's the development of the I think is it the frontal lobe? It's one of the lobes. But anyways, to have that native speaking tongue, that has to be developed within the first 7 years. After that, you're going to have that accent. Yeah. So I mean,
that is absolutely correct. Yes, sir. 5 to 7 years is kind of the generally accepted range. So from birth to 5, that's where you kind of gain native language speaking. If you learn anytime after 5 or 6, you're going to be a non-native speaker. So we could kind of go into this forever, but we're at a pretty good stopping point at 7:20. So Dr. Gravis, 15 minutes, is it? So I guess we'll see you all 35. Good conversation with a TED Talk by Victor Wooten. And before we really get into it, all I'd like to say to preface is, after we do this, we're going to obviously discuss about the ways in which we can leverage people's knowledge about language and hopefully be able to use that towards a more effective instruction. That was kind of the entire premise of talking about language. So let's see what Victor Wooten has to say regarding all of that. Everyone's muted, yeah? Oh. I'm not muted. Oops.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And it's true, I was born into a band. And very literally, I mean that literally. When I was born, my 4 older brothers who were already playing music, they knew that they needed a bass player to round out the family band. And so I was born into that role. And as I'm older, I'm looking back on it now that I'm kind of called a teacher. When I look back on that and how I was taught, I realized that I wasn't really taught, which is why I say that music is a language. Because if you think about your first language, for me and probably most of us here, it might be English, so I'm just going to go with English. If you think about how you learned it, you realize you weren't taught it. People just spoke to you. But the coolest thing, this is where it gets interesting, is you were allowed to speak back. Now, if I take the music example, in most cases, our beginners are not allowed to play with the better people. You're stuck in the beginning class. You have to remain there a few years until you elevate into the intermediate and then advanced. And after you graduate the advanced class, you still have to go out and pay a lot of dues. But with language, to use a musical term, even as a baby, you're jamming with professionals all the time, to the point that you don't even know you're a beginner. No one says, I can't talk to you until you got to go over there. When you're older, and then I can speak to you. That doesn't happen. No one tells you what you have to say. You're not made to sit in a corner and practice. You're never even corrected when you're wrong. Think about it. When you're 2, 3 years old and you say a word wrong over and over, no one corrects you. If you say it wrong enough times, instead of correcting you, your parents learn your way. And they start saying it wrong too. The coolest part of that is you remain free with how you talk. And so you never have to follow the musical role of learning all these years and then going and finding your voice. With your speaking voice, you've never lost it. No one ever robbed you of that. And so, because when I was young, that's how I was learning. I was learning English and music at the same time and in the same way. So I tell this to people. I usually say, yeah, I started when I was 2 or 3. And I say that just because that's more believable. But when did you start speaking English? Did you wait until you were 2 or 3? No. You were speaking, I'd probably say before birth. Whenever you could hear is when you probably started learning it. To me, that's very, very cool and very, very clever of my brothers, who are my oldest brother out of the 5. I'm the youngest. Reggie's the oldest. He's only 8 years older than me. So how he was this smart, I don't know. That's the real question. That should be the real TED Talk. Is how he figured out the ingenious way of not teaching us younger brothers how to play. It didn't start me by putting a bass in my hands, no. The first thing they did was play music around me. From my earliest ages that I can remember living in Hawaii, and my brothers would set up and I can remember seeing a plastic stool. A lot of times we'd set up in the front yard, but I could see a plastic stool with a little plastic toy Mickey Mouse wind-up guitar laying on top of that stool. No one had to tell me that that was for me. The same way no one has to tell you when it's your turn to talk. You know how to do it. And so I knew that stool was for me. I knew that instrument was for me. And it had plastic strings on it. You would wind it up and it would play a song, but you couldn't really play it from the strings. And it wasn't about that. By the time I was old enough to hold an instrument, they gave me something to hold, just for the sake of holding something, preparing me for the later years. It wasn't about playing that instrument. That's the mistake a lot of us music teachers make, is we teach kids how to play the instrument first before they understand music. You don't teach a kid how to spell. Teaching a kid to spell milk before they've drinking a lot of it for a few years doesn't make sense, does it? But for some reason, we still think it does in music. We want to teach them the rules and the instruments first. But by the time I was about 2 and they put that toy in my hands, I was already very musical. Because I believe you're born musical. Just listen to anybody's voice. Listen to any child's voice. There's no more pure music than that. So my brothers somehow knew I was born musical, but they wanted me to be a bass player. So when I was old enough, they put a toy in my hands and they would play. So I would just bounce up and down and strum along too. But the coolest thing about it, again, is it wasn't about the instrument. I was learning to play music, not an instrument. And I continue that hopefully today. Again, what I did know was I knew what it meant when my brother opened up his hi-hat at the end of a 4-bar phrase. Or I learned these phrases versus that phrase. The same way a baby knows what it means when the mother raises the pitch of her voice versus the father lowering the pitch of his. You know these things, even though you may not even understand what the word means. And so you're learning all these things. By the time a baby can speak a real word, they know already a lot about the language. So I was learning music the same way. By the time I had an instrument in my hands, I was already very musical. When I turned about 3 years old, Reggie took 2 strings off of one of his 6-string guitars. He took the 2 high strings off, and that became my first real instrument. And so Reggie actually started teaching me to put my finger in certain places to produce notes to songs I already knew. So I wasn't starting from the beginning. I was musical first. Now I just had to put that music through an instrument. And looking back on it now, I realize that's how I learned to talk. It wasn't about learning the instrument first. Who cares about the instrument you talk with? It's about what you have to say. And so I've always musically maintained my own voice. I've always had something to say. And I've learned how to speak through my instrument. So if we think about a couple of things, not being forced to practice, not being told what you have to say when I'm speaking English again, not being told what you have to say. You know, when a teacher teaches you a new word in English, she has you put it into a sentence, into context right away. A music teacher will tell you to go practice it, right? Practicing works, but it's a slower process than putting it into context. And we know that with English. And so this was the way I learned. And as I grew older, about 5 years old, we were actually on tour, the 5 of us. We were fortunate enough to be able to tour opening for a great soul singer named Curtis Mayfield. And so if I was 5 years old, my oldest brother was only 13. But when I think about it, we could speak good English at that age. Why not music? So I've always since then approached music just like a language because I learned it at the same time and in the same way. The best part of it all is I've maintained something that little children are born with, and that's freedom. A lot of us are taught out of our musical freedom when we're first given a lesson. Because we go to a teacher, and the teacher rarely ever finds out why we came in the first place. A lot of times it's that kid playing that air guitar where there's no right or wrong. It's not about the right or wrong notes. It's not about the instrument. They're playing because it feels right. It's the same way and reason that you sing in the shower. Or when you're driving to work, you're singing. You're not singing because it's the right notes or you know the right scales. You're singing because it feels good. I spoke to a lady at breakfast who says, I'm Ella Fitzgerald when I'm in the shower. And of course she's right. So why does that change when someone outside starts to listen? That freedom becomes lost as we grow and as we learn, and we need to find a way to keep that freedom. And it can be done. It's not going forever. A kid playing air guitar will play with a smile on their face. Give them the first lesson, the smile goes away. And a lot of the times you have to work for your whole musical lives to get that smile back. As teachers, we can keep that smile if we approach it the right way. And I say approach it like a language. Allow the student to keep the freedom. As I got older, a little bit older, and my brothers and I started to tour and play a lot, my mom would ask a question that I never understood really until I got much older and had kids of my own. But my mom would ask us boys, she would say, what does the world need with another good musician? Think about that. And I'm saying music, but insert your own career. What does the world need with you? And it really made me realize that now, as I got older, music is more than just a language. Music is a lifestyle. It's my lifestyle. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about the lifestyle a lot of musicians lead. Because we can look back at our musical heroes of the past and realize that they were huge successes in music, but just as huge failures in life. And I could name a few of them, but I don't want to upset anybody. But if we think about our heroes, a lot of them, and I think our parents were preparing us for something that we didn't know at the time, but I think she could see ahead. What does the world need with another good musician? So we're practicing all these hours. We turned our whole house into a music room where all the neighborhood, all the statewide musicians would show up. We would practice. My parents would spend money they didn't have to make sure we had the next newest instrument every Christmas. Santa would bring the newest thing. What was that about? Was it just so that we could make money? So that we could stand on stage and bask in the glory? I realize now that it's much more than that. Music is my lifestyle. And now as I've gone into really study music so that I could share it with other people in a teacher's role, I realize that there's a lot that we can learn from music and apply to our lives. To be a good musician, you have to be a good listener. It doesn't matter how great I am as a bassist or any instrument. It doesn't matter how great I am. We can put 5 of the world's best musicians on this stage. But if we're great separate from each other, it's going to sound horrible. But if we listen to each other and play together, individually, we don't have to be as great. And it'll sound much better. I was invited a couple years in a row to go to Stanford in California and put together a musical team to address the incoming freshman class. And we were able to use music to give them an idea of what the next 4 years of their life might be like. And it was fun using music to do it because music is a way that I can talk about anything that could be kind of touchy. Politics, racism, equality, inequality, religion. I can do it through music and I'm still safe, But we were able to pick someone out of the audience who never played an instrument before. Usually it was a female, have her come up, we strap a bass around her neck, and then I would get the band playing. And as soon as the band starts playing, that person starts doing this, right? And I say, that's music. If you listen to that bass, like any instrument in a music store, when it's sitting there, it doesn't make a sound. So if you want music to come out of that, you got to put it there. And that groove that's in your neck, you just got to put it into that instrument. So I just had her with her left hand squeeze the neck, because everyone knows how to hold an instrument. That's not new. Squeeze it, and then let your right hand dance on the string. And she starts bouncing on that note, and the band kicks up around her. All of a sudden, she's a bassist. More so, she's a musician. A dancer never has to ask questions before they dance. A singer doesn't usually have to ask, what key are we in? Musicians have to ask too many questions. So what that taught me is that, wow, because we're great, she doesn't have to know anything. And all of a sudden, anyone who were to walk into the room and see this band with this newcomer on stage, no one would know who was the newcomer. So that let me know, wow, if I use my greatness in the right way, it can help others rise up quickly. And the coolest thing about that whole thing at Stanford is she got to take the bass home. You know? So, and I saw her recently, and she's still a bassist, you know. So that's great. So listening is a great musical key that we can use for life, working together, of course, being great to help other people great. When people put you up on a pedestal, don't come off the pedestal acting like you're humble. Stay up on that pedestal, because if they put you there, that's showing you how high they can see. Stay there and then pull them up. And they'll grow faster than if you come down, right? So we're going to help these people because we're great. And in music, usually I'm not great until you say I am anyway. You know, they say, oh, he's won all these Grammys. I can't win anything without you all. But another thing my mom always taught us is that you boys are already successful. The rest of the world just doesn't know it yet. I didn't understand that then, but I really, really do now. So, really quickly before I get out of here, I just want you to think about this. If I were to play two notes, let's say I play a C, just going to have to use your imagination. If I play a C and a C sharp right next to each other, it'll probably sound like those notes clash. Wrong, bad. But if I take the C up an octave, play the C sharp and the C again, all of a sudden it sounds beautiful. Same two notes. That C becomes a major seventh to the C sharp, which is a key element that makes a chord almost too beautiful, too nice sounding. So how can these same two notes sound bad and clash in one instance and beautiful in another? Let's take that to life. When we see something bad or awful or horrible in life, maybe we're just viewing it in the wrong octave. Maybe we could change our perspective. Actually, if you see something that's wrong, you should know that you're seeing it in the wrong octave. And find a way to change your viewpoint. Or to use a musical term, change your octave. Countries make bombs with the goal of hurting people, instilling fear, killing people, proving a point. Countries, governments bless the bombs before they're sent. And this happens from the top down, the government down. This is our answer. Makes me realize that the solution may have to come from the bottom up. Is anyone working on a bomb that makes people love you? Maybe a Cupid bomb. I believe we already have it. It's called music. And every country has their own version of it. And it works. It brings people together. You don't have to know a thing about it to get it. It's a language. It's a lifestyle. And it can save the world. My name is Victor Wooten. I'm a musician. And I hope you will join me on the battlefield. Thank you. Thank you.
Quite a lot to unpack there. So does anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to share? I know that I have a couple of quotes that I certainly wrote down if I need to facilitate some discussion. We got Robert with his hand up. Go for it.
I get where he's going with it, but I disagree with him. And the big reason why is if we were in I'm going to put this kind of as clean as possible. If we were in a utopian society, absolutely. Yes. We can start from there and, you know, kumbaya, we can go where we need to go. But when it comes to music, there's two forms, instrumental or voice. With the voice, yes, you can do this. But when it comes to an instrument, you can't. You don't have that luxury. Because when it, like with instruments, they're built for certain things. So like, for instance, if you're playing on a saxophone, you're not going to be able to get the note you want because it's in between two pitches, but with a voice you can. I feel that like in this essence that like music is a language, but how we're taught it is not necessarily the correct way. I agree with him, but however, just saying that is the only way how you can be a good teacher, I'm going to disagree with that whole entire premise. I yield.
Okay, so one of the takeaways that I recalled was the quote, "What does the world need with another good musician?" And I think that that's a question stated from the point of view where life's work is required to fit the needs of a society, as opposed to people doing what they're passionate about as a means to actually enrich societies. And the first way is very transactional. It views all educational processes as a transactional situation in which you pay money and you receive a degree, and in exchange for that education, you've now been trained to do something that society is going to pay you for. And that's a pretty limited way of viewing educational systems. And it's very difficult for music educators to defend their life work if that is the societal viewpoint in which, for example, STEM fields are valued in our public education system over the humanities and the arts. And so that's something that I think we're all in the business of combating, that idea that what does the world need with another good musician? The second thing I'll address very quickly is just based on something that Robert shared with the class. I thought it was interesting when he said there are musicians and then there are singers. This wasn't Robert, this was Wooten. Said there's musicians and then there's singers, which always sort of, I get my heckles up when people innocuously make that silly mistake. Obviously, singers are musicians too. As Rob pointed out, there are two kinds of music, vocal and instrumental. One of the reasons why singers are generally not as good musicians in terms of musicianship as instrumentalists is because of exactly what Wooten suggests, which is that you can simply teach people by rote from the very beginning to sing and participate in the choral experience. And then, you know, they get to high school and they come here and audition for a music degree and they can't even read a diatonic scale. However, music literacy is built into the methodology of learning how to play an instrument. You have to know the difference between a quarter note and a whole note, at least in terms of feel, before you can properly play your trombone or your saxophone. And then you learn the visual language of how all of that is represented. And it's a big problem. In fact, a lot of my life's work is trying to get singers to be as, that the expectations of musicianship are as high for the singer as they are for the instrumentalist. Why do I feel that way? It's not just because I feel like they should be great. It's because ultimately literacy is the key to personal expression. If you go all the way back to the idea of linguistic literacy and reading and writing literacy, before we lived in worlds that valued, or societies that valued literacy, we were beholden to experts to tell us what everything meant. We were beholden to experts to potentially guide us and mislead us in certain situations. And we had to basically do what other people said we were supposed to do. Literacy is what fostered the Renaissance. It's what fostered humanism. It's what fostered the scientific revolution. It's what fostered the ability for individuals to democratize themselves and to have agency. And on a musical level, if we want people to groove, like Daniel's talking about, if we want them to be literate, then and to be able to express themselves, there has to be a certain level of literacy beyond just rote understanding of something. All right, I'm off my soapbox.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of both what Dr. Gravis and what Rob are saying. I have taught beginning band more times than I can count at this point. It's up in the mid 40s at this point. How many times I've taught a beginning band. And I would love to see Victor Wooten teach a beginning band the way he's telling to teach the beginning band. Because I would love for him to just literally put instruments in their hands and tell them to go for it. And so we're coming back to this linguistics and how speech is kind of similar to music. And it is. And you do experiment with speech. Just like you can experiment with music, I can hand you a saxophone and tell you to push random things and hopefully make a good sound. But at some point, you have to have a teacher teach you that this is B, this is C, in order for you to really be musical and play with those advanced musicians. And also, I would love to watch Victor Wooten take 1 year and teach a beginning band. Not bass guitarists, but a beginning band. Because I think that the way he's talking about teaching bass guitar is fantastic. I think that works for bass guitar, but what works for bass guitar may not work for saxophone or trumpet or percussion or even singing. Because you can literally just take a guitar or a bass guitar and strum those random things, great. And if I have 5 professional musicians around me, yes, I can play G and D and sound amazing. I agree with him. I can do that. So I think the biggest thing here to take is that how do we teach beginning band knowing that it's kind of like teaching sound? And I think that's what he's getting at, is that you have to feel the music first in order to play the music. And you have to be able to know what you're trying to do in order to play the music, which I agree with. But getting to that point, there's a lot to get to that point. Yeah.
Great point, Messiah.
I think you muted me.
Yep, you're good. Just mute it again. Now we're good.
Oh, okay. 2 things. Yes, I think you can, in some ways, I'm thinking about teaching music to a vocalist or a singer. Yes, you could put a novice into a band situation and have them sing. However, I don't think that they would learn breath control or support without a formal education. So in that sense, I agree with Robert. And then my second point is I liked the when he said, when people put you on a pedestal, stay on the pedestal because then you can help someone else be great. And then when I heard that, I immediately thought of my choir members at the church where I'm music director, because they kind of say, "Oh, Perry, you can sing. You're the best singer we've ever had." But then I like to push them and say that you too can become the best singer that you can, and here's how I can teach you to do that. So, I like that quote in that sense. But again, I'm not sure that a singer is going to, or a vocalist is going to be great just by listening to someone else. They have to learn certain techniques, just like you do when you're on an instrument.
I'm gonna make a quick comment before you go. So I just wanted to reiterate. I mean, like, we can definitely pick apart specific arguments, and I mean, obviously, there are things left to be desired when it comes to Victor Wooten's approach to pedagogy. That said, remember the kind of driving force we're looking for is how we can apply this towards our own practices. I mean, we can nitpick all night, but at the same time, try and see if we can come back towards applications. But go on with your thoughts from here, Robert, then Daniel.
Oh, I'm wild up now. So in regards to linguistic nature versus nurture, it depends on how you're going to be looking at it. It's when we hear whales communicating, we call that singing. That's nature. Or sorry, that's in nature. But if we are going off of this idea that Wooten's trying to say that basically, in essence, rhythm, you have to feel the rhythm, you have to feel the meaning. That's nature. But in regards to music itself, because I could just make sick beats, I can make sounds with my mouth. The point is it sound or is it music? Is it sound or is it music that I'm trying to convey? And is this me communicating? What if I'm making music and creating sounds, but that's just my stomach just going off because I had Del Taco before I got here? So, I mean, Del Taco Ron is an really bad Mexican food chain here, okay? We'll expand. But when it comes to nurture, so the nurture thing is if we're in public schools, yes, we have to teach them. But if you are out there in the what was it, the Incan Nation, Machu Picchu, just that culture, they created a system of music that is just based off of rain sounds to say, hey, this is the rainy season. Is that nurture or is that nature? That's nature. But it's nurture because they created the instruments. But in this regards to linguistic communication, I can't say it's one or the other, and I cannot say that it's both. Because it depends on where you're at, who you're trying to communicate this, because it's going to have a different meaning every single place. But Wooten just irked me the wrong way, and I yield.
Daniel, did you still have something that you wanted to input? If not, you can come down. Oh, well, you got you.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to play the devil's advocate a little bit. For those of you that disagree with Mr. Wooten, I would ask, do you have any examples of someone coming up in this system and it not working? Also, I'd say, I don't think he's saying that you should never have formal training. I kind of see it more as it's in addition to, especially from a young age, because he certainly did have formal training at some point. He certainly had formal training, or else he wouldn't be able to play. If you don't know Victor Wooten, he's one of probably the greatest living electric bass players, of our time. So he learned something along the way, whether it be like a mentorship, but someone told him how to play the bass. Also, this has been a hard thing for me to wrap my head around this idea of just playing and getting the sound in you, because this is not a concept that's foreign to me. I've been thinking about it for a couple years, and I have a couple examples. One is a friend of mine, his name is Jonathan Pinson, who is an amazing drummer, plays with everyone in the jazz world. I mean, name one of the top people when he plays with them. He's doing huge pop gigs. He can do whatever he wants. And one thing about when he was growing up was he would just go around the house banging on stuff. They called them spoons. He would pick up spoons and he would bang things with no regard to what was going on. Now, mind you, he just did this to the point where he's like, I want to play drums. He listened to a ton of music growing up. He has perfect pitch. He doesn't believe me when I tell him he has perfect pitch. He has perfect pitch, and is one of the most musical drummers I've ever heard. I'm going to name one other person too. There's a piano player named Aaron Parks. Now, if you take someone's name away from this, look up Aaron Parks, because I think he's going to go down in history as one of the most important innovators of the jazz language in the past 100 years. And I think he's under 40 right now. But listening to interviews and talking to him personally, something that was really important to his upbringing was when he was really young, he would go to the piano, had no training on the piano, and would just try and play and hear things. He would say, I'm trying to create a storm sound. I'm trying to create this. Absolutely no formal training at all. Got these things in his mind, got these sounds in his head. As he got older, he obviously learned from people. And I think the fact that he didn't have the formal training in the beginning and that he listened so closely is one of the main factors why he's so good. Now, the reason why he's so good is if you're familiar with jazz improvisation, you're supposed to, be spontaneously creating a solo over, right? That actually rarely happens in jazz. We all have stuff worked out, and you repeat things. If you listen to him play, it's almost like every solo he's playing was pre-composed because it fits together so perfectly. There's no repetition in any of his solos, and it's just this fluid thing. I've never seen anything like this, right? I've never seen it. It's unbelievable. And this fluidity, I think, purely comes from the years of him just listening and not knowing what he was doing. So I think there's a lot of validity in what Mr. Wooten is saying. But I also don't think he's saying that you should never have formal training at all.
Ron, would you like to go?
Yes. Actually, I partly agree. I partly agree with the lectures. A video's point of view that music does exist in our lives as early as language. Each of us has an understanding of music, just like we know to distinguish the other members of the family before we learn to say mom and dad. However, in my opinion, professional music performance training and practice are still needed for how to express music. True music freedom is based on professional music knowledge and performance skills. Therefore, although musical instrument teaching courses without smiles have reduced people's enthusiasm for learning music to some extent, they are indeed essential. Speaking of this, I thought of the topic of the final paper I was preparing, whether a non-conducting professional pianist can successfully conduct a piano concerto? My answer is no. Even though the pianist has a fairly deep understanding of this music, he cannot accurately conduct the orchestra's performance to express the music. It is like if you don't have basic performing skills, you cannot express your inner music ideas. So, therefore, my opinion is that the basis of expressing music is professional music knowledge. Yeah.
All right, I see that there's a lot of thoughts that we want to share, and I don't I kind of got lost in sort of the midst of it there. There's a lot of differing opinions, very strongly held opinions, no less. Okay, so I'm going to kind of throw this into the mix and let it sort of be there while we're making our other responses to whatever it is that we're talking about. And that is the quote that I'm going to be putting here into the chat that I saved from this video. Kid playing air guitar will play with a smile on their face. Give them their first lesson, the smile goes away. A lot of times you have to work your whole musical life to get that smile back. Do we agree? Do we disagree? Do we know how we interpret that specifically? And I'm just going to kind of throw that out there and yield to Robert.
Okay, changing the subject to the quote. I agree, but now going back to what I originally wanted to say. I think what the purpose of it was feeling, emotions, communicating through emotions. Sorry, I was very short on it. Yes, if you are trying to emulate an emotion, yes, I agree. To give you an example, my nephew, he is 11 years old, autistic. And we've been trying to get him involved into music, involved into the arts, and like the kid's just brilliant. But when we first started off getting him lessons, and he lived in Pasadena, and at the time, I was out in Yorba Linda. So, I mean, that commute was just, it wasn't going to work. So my sister and my brother-in-law ended up taking him to a place to go get lessons. And basically this guy just taught him drums, guitar, piano, just the works. And the whole time through these lessons, my nephew really didn't learn anything from this teacher. But the one thing that he did learn was, hey, I have this song I want to get out. I don't know how to do it, but I have this song. Yes, he had an emotion. He had something that he wanted to share. But how does one do that? The easiest way, and this got Dr. Gravis said it, Perry even said it, the easiest way to do this is through the voice. The voice. The second easiest way is to take a piece of string, make some tension, and you have a slide guitar, and you figure out where the points are of the music that you want to make. So I feel that it is like what Keanu just put, it is an expression, it is an emotion. It's not communication if you're trying to get something out there. So I mean, that's kind of how my opinion is on this. Like, you know, using my nephew as an example, but you know, these people they have a story that they want to let know, but they don't have a way. Yes, formal training. Yes, Victor William did have formal training, but the thing is, when you give someone lessons, yes, they're going to put a frown on their face. But the end game is, yes, they're going to start smiling because now they know how to imitate it. So yes, it is we're in an area where if he were to just do stand up and sing, he got it. But the thing is, if we were to give it to any instrument, instruments are flawed. Instruments are flawed because they're supposed to imitate what? The voice. The only closest instrument that's able to imitate the voice is the trombone. And the only reason why I'm saying okay, but this is my opinion. Everything is, when it comes to instrumental music, it's flawed. Voice is the purest thing that you're able to actually imitate the emotion right off the bat without training. Yes, I'm going there.
Hey, hey, Daniel, I think you may have meant to get into the queue, but instead you hit slow down. So if you meant to have your hand up, it is not at the moment. AJ, your turn.
Pretty please.
I think it should be, or is it just to me that you shared it? I'm assuming you tried.
Mine says is host disabled.
Yeah, okay, you probably have to do it to you specifically, or you stopped recording that part of it? Oh, that's what you did, okay.
Oh, well, that's fine too. Okay. So we as a society have taken a box and put music education into it. Whatever, there's a C in there, I promise. Okay, so we as a, I'm on mute, yeah, okay. So we as a society have taken a music education and put it in a box and said, this is what we should be doing, this is what we should teach, this is how it should sound, and this is great for organized band / music, whatever you want to call it. Okay, if you want to have organized band and music, that is fantastic. Let's put it in a box. I think what Wooten is really trying to get at, and what you're trying to get at with that guitar thing, is he's trying to make music, he's trying to get rid of the box. And he's trying to say that we can do this and go outside the box. Okay, that's fantastic. But is that going to work for the construct that we have already done? Can I go into wind ensemble next Monday during practice and say, Dr. Moss, I'm going to play whatever I feel like today. Don't care what you're doing. And I'm just going to take out a bassoon and do what I feel.
Or somebody walks by and hears you practicing outside and says, wow, this is great. I've always wanted to do this. And you throw a baritone into somebody's hand. And you're all supposed to be great to make that person feel good about it.
Yeah, exactly. And they take that baritone and they play wrong notes the entire time. And they play low because they've never been taught to tighten their lips. And so they can't get high notes out. And so then they are frustrated because they can't sound like the person next to them. And so if we're gonna take this box away.
Or worse, they don't know and they think they sound great.
Exactly, they don't know and they think they sound great. So if we're gonna take this box away, then we need to rethink how we do music education. And I don't think that's happening right now. To be completely honest with you, that's not what our discussion is for today, I don't think. Because if you wanna rethink music education, we need other things like money that we don't have. But that's a totally different topic. Anyways, that's what I think we're trying to get at here, is that learning music, we have put learning music, just like we have put school, just like we have put learning language into a box. This is how you do it. This is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. And if you want to get rid of those steps, like Victor Wooten obviously does, then we need to have a full philosophical discussion on how we do music education. And I don't think we need to do that.
All right. First off, just so I can get out of the way, trumpet at the same time also imitates a voice. Maybe not my voice, but kids' voices. So it's like, so that's another thing. That's another thing that Rob and I can talk about after class. But the main thing though that I want to point out is that I agree yet disagree with the comment about lessons, in that.
Could you just make sure that we're all on the same page? What comment?
Oh, the one about when we give children the freedom to or what you put here in the chat. Hold on.
The guitar thing? Oh, the thing about a kid with guitar.
Yeah.
Smile goes away, smile comes back.
Yeah, and then the smile goes away because of a lesson. I can agree, we had somewhat disagree. And and I disagree because of my own personal experience. I learned, but by the time that I learned, by the time that I actually began to take trumpet lessons, and this was after I had been playing for about 4 or 5 years. My first lesson, I was excited. I was actually happy. I was not frowned. If anything, I still remember to this day, I was happy, joyful, excited, and yet interested in what new things, what new techniques that I was going to learn from my new instructor. And so I really would agree, but yet disagree with his quote in saying that someone who's about to take their first lesson with an instrument, that smile goes away. Because for me, that smile never went away for trumpet.
You know, my primary instrument's trumpet.
Ooh, got a lot to say, a lot of looks in my face. So I wholly disagree with Robert. Disagree a lot with AJ. I do not think the saxophone, which is my instrument, is meant to sound like the human voice. If it was, I would just sing. To me, it is 100% its own thing. It's not trying to imitate the timbre, or else we would just have a bunch of people singing. Also, I disagree with some fundamental things. The trombone or the fretless bass are not the only instruments. I right now can pick up my saxophone and play 24, 28 divisions of the octave, right? Way more outside of our 12-tone scale. For so many things. Talking to AJ, this is one reason why I hate language. I'm going back to my hating words. It's because AJ, when he's talking and we're going through this whole conversation, right? You've looked at the topic I'm talking about and said, we are working within this framework. And this framework is to be able to reproduce music that's already been written, right? As I'm listening to this, I'm thinking that is not the framework we're working in, right? The framework is simply to make music, however that may be, right? We're starting to attach like our own meaning as to what we have to do with it. Victor Newton is saying, just start listening to music so you can make music, not do this so you can make music so you can go to concert band in middle school, playing that, get better, go to high school, and then go to college. He's talking about just make music. So like we've attached all of these other things to it that is not what he's talking about. If your goal is to become good at concert band and playing this music, then yes, you're gonna have to practice certain things. If your goal is to just make music, which I think Victor Wooten is saying, then it's an entirely separate process. There's something else, but I'm getting wound up. I can't remember. Anyway, okay, please go ahead.
All right, getting very set up here.
I think what Mr. Wooten's point was that to put the instrument in a kid's hand so that they can feel that initial joy. And I think then once they have that initial joy and that initial excitement of having that instrument in their hand, and then their mind expanding that, oh wow, I can play this instrument, then you give them the formal education to help maintain that joy. And then the quote that he says about the joy left, and he spent his whole musical lifetime. I have an example when I worked with my middle school choir. When I started with them, they couldn't sing a note. And when I started teaching them songs, and it sounded like crap. But once they worked on that, then they got the joy that was intended because they worked on it. And they realized that to get that joy, you do have to work at it. So I don't know that I agree with that quote, or maybe that quote was meant for his experience and not everyone's experience. I yield back.
Someone started the yield tonight. I think it was Robert. Yeah. I yield the floor. So actually, I would like to piggyback off what Perry was saying, and like the idea of this, like the joy that comes. So it's basically, I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of us have students that we're teaching to go somewhere else. As I was pointing out in the chat, it's not about making music in the effect of making music. I could sit there and play drums and, you know, have a concert that's like soothes my own ego and, you know, not teach anyone anything, and that's making music. But we're all trying to get other people to learn how to make music, to get that process. And what Perry was saying, this idea of like getting joy with the manipulative, with the instrument in hand, the joy of making those sounds at the beginning. So that's the creating the joy. The maintenance of joy, I think, comes from the continuation of that process of learning how to do the instrument correctly and how to increase your range and how to get great tone and all of these sorts of ideas. So yeah, like I like that idea that you put forth, and I think that was kind of what you were saying, right? Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, just based off of that? Just want to make sure. Okay, we got Robert.
Point of clarification. I'm going on this train. We're talking about linguistics. So in this case, what part of communication are we trying to get at? The emotion behind it? That means open the door. What part are we like, what are we trying to get at for like linguistics?
Linguistics is officially defined as the study of language. And if musicology is the study of music, we still haven't answered the question, what on God's green earth is music, in this classroom full of people. So I'm literally not gonna be able to answer that question in a concise and specific way, because language means different things to different people. And this can change with something as simple as the language with which you speak, because of all the subtleties that are involved in that specific language. I've been told that, I don't know why I keep thinking of ASL, American Sign Language. I don't speak ASL to any degree, but there is a very big difference. I know that one, I'll tell you later. But there's a very big difference between a hearing speaker, someone who speaks ASL but can hear, can talk normally, and a non-hearing, a deaf person who speaks ASL out of necessity. And a large part of that is the facial features. The ability to be able to emote is a very, very big part of ASL. And you lose that when you have hearing, because you can get across points and you don't need to be able to express yourself in the same kind of way. And it's something that sort of comes from that. So at any rate, I can't really answer the question, what is language? If I was to say something as contrite as it's the communication of information, then someone can make the argument that that's what music is, and that's what visual media is, and that's what drama or dance is. You know, like all the VAPAs can kind of fall under this communication and this movement of information from one person to another. I have Perry who'd like to make a comment.
About not being able to emote, we lose that ability to emote.
No. So I want to make, let me real quick. Hey, Daniel, Ron, is there an echo? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Just want to make sure. Okay, good. So basically, like I said, I'm not a signer. I don't speak ASL, but there is, like, you can, like, it's kind of like a deaf person, a speaker of ASL, can tell without asking if a signer is hearing or non-hearing based off of their facial expression. It's just kind of like something that happens as a result of being able to not hear a lot of the emotion. So, because for instance, when you can, when you're speaking, when you use your voice, there's rising intonation, there's falling intonation. There's all these different things that you can pick up specifically from just tone of the language. And so that bit of information becomes sort of a supplement to the facial expression. Okay, so I'm not saying that people who sign ASL but can hear are robotic, but it's that there is something that's lost in it because they don't have that necessitation of getting all information across through the visual cues. Does that make sense? Absolutely. Dr. Evans, if anyone else wants to raise it.
That's a really interesting point, Keone. And one thing I remember from a linguistics class when I was an undergraduate student was that we often think that literacy in a foreign language is when you're fully competent in the vocabulary and the syntax of that language. But the final step of full immersion in another language is actually, it's not perceptible that you have an accent anymore. Because accents are simply somebody applying the diction rules of their native language upon a foreign language. And so I think that that's what you're getting at when it comes to facial expressions.
Okay. That works.
In terms of
works.
ASL.
You could say that in a sense you could say
it's an accent that you can
The
perceive.
lack of like very, very overly expressive. What we would, as hearing people think of overly expressive facial motion, is that accent. That's a really good way of putting it. I've never heard it put that way before. Wonderful. Does anyone else have any thoughts they'd like to share? If not, well, it is 8:40, so I think that's actually a natural stopping point. If there's no one else who wants to put any other ideas forth, so I really appreciate everybody sort of participating in this kind of goofy little idea of mine. I hope that you got some use out of it. I hope at the very least you got to hear some contrasting opinions. The idea is not to walk out of this class right or wrong. It's to be exposed to these thoughts. And I'm glad that we have a lot of different-minded individuals here who are willing to voice their opinions, because this space hopefully is safe enough that we can actually respect the opinions of one another while disagreeing with them on fundamental levels. I think that's wonderful, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So thank you folks very much. Dr. Evans, is there anything else? Hope you folks have a good night.
Great job. All right.